Hey everybody, this is Emily from Life Enrichment, and I'm here today to do another Broadway show with you. So thank you very much for watching. Let's get started. The musical that we're going to be doing today is called Something Rotten. It's a relatively new musical, so you may not have heard of it before, but it's a really fun one, and I'm really excited to show you all today. Okay, Something Rotten. So, Something Rotten, the music and lyrics are written by Carrie and Wayne Kirkpatrick, and the book is by Carrie Kirkpatrick as well, along with John O'Farrell. It premiered on Broadway in April of 2015 at the St. James Theater. It was directed and choreographed by Casey Nicolau, and the original production starred Brian Darcy James, Christian Borle, and Michael James Scott. So you may know Brian Darcy James. I got to see him as Shrek in Shrek the Musical. Christian Borle is a two-time Tony Award-winning actor. He was also, along with Brian, in the show Smash, in the television show. And Michael James Scott, you may recognize that name. He was the original genie in the musical Aladdin on Broadway. So again, it had opened in April of 2015, and it closed in January of 2017 with 742 performances. Following the closure on Broadway, there was a national tour that premiered that same month, January of 2017, and the national tour starred Rob McClure and Adam Pascal. Rob McClure, you may remember, was the star of the musical Honeymoon in Vegas, a musical I had done a couple weeks ago. And right now he is in the musical Mrs. Doubtfire on Broadway, based on the film starring Robin Williams. Adam Pascal, you may recognize, he's done quite a few things, but his true claim to fame was he originated the role of Roger in the musical Rent, as well as starring as Roger in the movie version of Rent. The musical itself is set in 1595. It's a fictional story about the Bottom brothers, Nick and Nigel, and they are writers who are rivals to Shakespeare. They're contemporaries of Shakespeare. Again, they are fictional characters, and they create the world's first musical. All right, so let's get started on the plot. So the plot starts with the minstrel. He welcomes the audience to the Renaissance, the time period that we're in currently. The minstrel was the character that was played by Michael James Scott. You may see the photo right there on the right-hand side. That middle character is the minstrel, but that is not Michael James Scott. That is the person that portrayed him in the national tour. So the story starts with the Bottom brothers. Again, their names are Nick and Nigel, and they are starting to rehearse their production of Richard II. It's a play. Until they hear about the Bard, that's Shakespeare. You may have heard that nickname before. He's known as the Bard. And he's soon to be releasing his own version. And after we hear about that, we hear that Nick expresses his dislike of Shakespeare. Number one, he doesn't understand why he would come out with Richard III and then Richard II. That doesn't make sense to him. But he expresses his dislike of Shakespeare. He thinks that he's overrated. And this is following Shakespeare's big hit, Romeo and Juliet, which was just released. So Lord Clapham, he is the man who's their investor for their play. And he says that he's going to take away their funding if they don't create something new. Now that they hear that Shakespeare is going to release his version of Richard II, they have to think of something new and original, or else he's not going to fund their play. They then come across the character of Shylock, which you may recognize that name from Shakespeare's work. Shylock is a Jewish character, and he offers to fund their play for them, but at this time in history, it is illegal to employ a Jew. So they turn him away because they don't want to break the law. We then see the character of Bee. She is Nick's wife, and she insists on helping him, even by doing jobs that are meant for men. She goes and she catches their food for them every night. Again, he's a playwright, so he's not doing the typical things that men would be doing at the time. So she's kind of filling that role that's more traditionally held by men. He doesn't really like that idea, but she insists that, she's playing their role. She sings a song called Right Hand Man, and, she wants to be a supporting wife to him. She does what she has to do, and she doesn't hold anything against him. She wants to support him, and, she tries to discourage him from stealing the money out of their money box, which they have set aside. They one day want to own a country home. They don't have that great of a life currently. So she, tries to encourage him to, go out and do his best work. After she leaves, he kind of, is with himself and admits that really his loathing for Shakespeare stems from his own insecurity about his skill. He's a playwright as well, and none of his work is nearly as accomplished as Shakespeare's. So he kind of confesses that he doesn't really hate Shakespeare as much as he's envious of him. After realizing that, he decides that he's going to see a soothsayer, someone who can predict the future. So he steals money from the money box of savings that he and his wife have, and he goes to see a soothsayer. This soothsayer's name is Nostradamus, Thomas Nostradamus to be exact, and he is the nephew of the famous philosopher Nostradamus. Again, this is a fictional story, so while Nostradamus was a real person, this character Nostradamus is a fictional nephew of that person. So Nick goes to Nostradamus, and Nostradamus tells Nick that the next big thing in theater is going to be the musical. Again, Nick is looking for some guidance. He's looking for something that he can work with in order to make his next big hit and get that kind of success and notoriety that Shakespeare has so far. So Nostradamus tells Nick that the next big thing is going to be the musical, which we'll get into in a minute here. So let's start with some of our clips. Unfortunately, most of the clips that I have today are going to be from Act 1. There aren't too many things out there from Act 2, so we're going to spend a significant more time on Act 1. This first clip that I'll show you is a clip that they showed at the Tony Awards in 2015 when they were nominated. And it is just little snippets of scenes from the musical, but the backtrack that you'll hear is the opening number song, which is Welcome to the Renaissance. It's a very big, boisterous opening number. It's a lot of fun, and I think you'll enjoy it. And this is just a short clip of it. So the second clip I'm going to show you is the second number of the musical, and this is the character of Nick Bottom, and this is his song, God, I Hate Shakespeare. It's a very comical number. And this performance that you're going to see is a promo that they did on live TV. So it's just a couple of the cast members. And this is actually Rob McClure, who's playing Nick. Again, he's the one that played the character of Nick in the national tour.
God, I hate Shakespeare. That's right, I said it. No, I hate Shakespeare. I just don't get it how a mediocre actor from a measly little town is suddenly the brightest jewel in England's royal crown. Oh God, I hate Shakespeare. It's like a word even. Oh no, you're in Shakespeare. That little turd, he has no sense about the audience. He makes them feel so dumb. That bastard doesn't care that my poor ass is getting numb. How can you say that? How can you say that? It's easy, I can say it because it's absolutely true. Don't be a penis, the man is a genius. His genius is he's fooling all of you.
But he's brilliant, what majesty flows from his pen. His poetry soars like a sweet violin. God's own inspiration, like lightning doth strike him. And he captures my soul.
Oh, jeez, you sound just like him.
Really? Oh, thanks.
You should hate Shakespeare.
Well, I don't. I try to emulate Shakespeare.
Well, there's your problem. You're so blinded by civil art. You're such a pompous little man.
Why is it a problem to admit that I'm a fan?
Because he's a hack with a knack for stealing anything he can.
How can you say that? How can you say that the man really knows how to write a fiction play? Do you wish you could pen one? We wish we were in one.
I just wish that he would go away.
Well, that's not gonna happen because everybody I know says he's the greatest writer England's ever known.
And that's another thing I hate about Shakespeare. Is all the twits who bloviate about Shakespeare and how they prattle on about his great accomplishments. Well, la-di-da-di-da. And once they start their gush and there's no stopping them, and then it's blah-blah-blah-blah-blah Shakespeare. And he walks in and dum-da-dum, ta-da, Shakespeare. He's holding court and they say, well, you're such a genius, and your writing is divine. A rose by the other name is such a clever line. And they're all, and he's all stop, and they're all, and I'm all, bleh. And I really get sick of it. Oh, I hate Shakespeare.
I think by now we sort of know you hate Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. The way he paints humility when all he does is gloat. The way he wears that silly frilly collar around his throat. The poster child who I know one should ever procreate. Let me make a shorter list and I will give it to you straight. Every little thing about Shakespeare is what I hate.
He hates, he clearly showed you really truly hates Shakespeare.
Don't hate.
Alright, so that was a feature that they did on Fox News. Again, that was Rob McClure. He played him in the national tour, playing Nick. And the other character he was talking to is the character of Nigel. That's his brother. So again, the two of them are both playwrights, but Nigel is very into poetry, and he loves, as you can tell, he really loves and idolizes Shakespeare and his writing style. So the next clip that I'm going to show you is the song I mentioned before called Right Hand Man. So this is Bea, the character who is Nick's wife. And this is her song, trying to reassure him that she has no problem taking on this role that she's created. She wants to be supportive of him. This is actually this is a recasting of the original Broadway cast. So this is on Broadway, but it wasn't the original. It was recast from several months later.
If you're ever in a pickle, you can call for me and quick'll be how fast I run.
But I'm not in a pickle.
You and me should be a team for any dream or any scheme. That's how it should be done. Sure, I could stay in the background, just smiling every now and again. But just to be a pretty lady, that would be a pity. Baby, let me be your right hand man.
You should Probably listen. She's usually right.
Eat your cabbage.
Okay.
I am stronger than you think. Don't be thinking I am tough. I am where you want to go when the going's getting rough. So when things are going badly,
They're not.
They kind of are.
No, things are fine.
But it's okay.
love.
What?
Quit trying to protect me.
Please, just change the subject.
Not until I know that if you're ever in a fix and it's a fix you need to fix, then I'm your go-to guy. Don't be so literal, and don't forget I'm not a shrinking pile and a solid rock. Hey, am I? So I'll be thinking I'll crumble when the you-know-what hits the fan.
All right, so that was just a little taste of this actress, Nicole Kristen Brown. She's very good. So she wasn't the original Bee. She played her several months later on Broadway, but she just has an excellent voice, so I wanted to show her performance. I'm gonna get out of here real quick so I can get to the next slide. All right, so let's continue on with Act 1. So after we see Nick, consulting with Nostradamus, we go back to the character of Nigel. And Nigel has met a woman named Portia. She's a Puritan, and the two of them have fallen in love. Nick kind of doesn't really like this idea. He tries to tell Nigel that it's to stay away from her because he knows that her Puritan father is not going to allow them to be together. So it's probably for the best that he stay away, but we will see that that's not the case. We then go back to Nick, and he's thought about this idea of the musical with Nostradamus, and he proposes the idea to Nigel. He doesn't tell him about Nostradamus, he just tells him that he has this idea that they're going to produce a musical. But Nigel, again, he's a very gifted playwright, he's a poet, and he would rather do a play about two brothers. He has this idea called The Brothers of Cornwall, and it's something that he wants to put together. But Nick advises against it, and they decide they're going to go with the musical idea. You'll see that Nick is the headstrong one, and Nigel just kind of goes along with whatever Nick says and does. So they get their troupe together to put on a musical, and they decide they're going to do a musical about the plague called Black Death. So they have this number that they've put together called the Black Death, and they put it on for Lord Clapham in order to, seek out his funding that they need. But he is disgusted by it. He does not like it at all. He disapproves of this idea. He storms off, and so they're left without their funding, and they need to think of something else to do. So Nigel decides that he's going to work on a new play. And while he's working on it, he meets up again with Portia. They talk more, and they just, they bond over all the things they have in common. They both really love poetry, and they both bond over that, and she's undecided about what she's going to do about her father, but they're not really too concerned about it at the moment. While they're sitting there, a messenger comes forward and invites Nigel to Shakespeare in the Park along with an after party. And he asks if she can be his +1, and the messenger agrees. So they go to this party, and again, Nigel really idolizes Shakespeare. So he asks Shakespeare to read his work. He wants his opinion. He's someone that he really looks up to. So Shakespeare agrees to look over it. And while he's doing that, Nick arrives at the party. And Nick, starts going off. He chastises Shakespeare. He scolds him. He accuses him of trying to steal Nigel's work. And while this is going on, Portia has gotten drunk at the party, and her father comes in, finds her there, and he admonishes Nigel and takes off with Portia. So it's not looking too great for those two lovebirds. Nick, after he yells at Shakespeare and everything, he wants some more advice. So he takes the rest of the money that he's stolen from his money box, and he goes to see Nostradamus again. And this time he asks Nostradamus, what is Shakespeare's next big hit? What is the next work that Shakespeare is going to be working on that's going to, soar him up even higher. And Nostradamus, he's looking into the future, and he sees Shakespeare working on Hamlet, but he mistakes Hamlet for omelet. This is where the musical is going to get a little goofy here. So he thinks that the next work that Shakespeare will be working on is a play called Omelet. So Nick decides to get to work on Omelet the musical. He's very excited about his prospects of the future. He thinks that he's going to be even bigger than Shakespeare now. He's going to come up with this great work that's inspired by Shakespeare's work, and he sings a song called Bottom's Gonna Be on Top. So the first number I'm going to show you from this slide is the first time that he goes to consult Nostradamus, and Nostradamus tells him that they should put on a musical. So this version that you're going to see is from the original Broadway production, and you'll see that there's going to be tomato splats on the screen. And what that is the creators of Something Rotten put together this musical, put together this video with all the references that they make to various musicals. So you'll see what I'm talking about when we get started, but I just wanted to give you a warning about what you're going to be seeing. It may look a little silly, but this is something that Something Rotten creators put on their YouTube channel so that people could not only enjoy this really great number called a musical, but they can also see all the allusions that are made to various musicals and also various components of musicals. All right, so this is the number a musical.
It's a musical, and nothing's as amazing as a musical, with song and dance, and sweet romance, and happy endings happening by happenstance. Bright lights, stage fights, and a dazzling chorus. You want to be great and you gotta create a musical. Feel that fascinating rhythm moving to your feet.
What is that?
Feel your ass gyrating to that titillating beat.
Oh, are you okay?
You slap your lap, then fingers snap. That's when you know it's time to tap. Oh! 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a musical! What do you talk? It's a musical! A musical? No, a musical with girls on stage!
A musical.
They've got sappy repartee, and the women are risque, and the chorus boys are kind of gay.
A musical.
A true blue new musical. Stand back! It's a musical!
Some musicals are very serious.
It's a musical for us.
A big and shiny, mighty, finey, glitter, glitz, and chorus lining. Bob your head and shake your hiney. Musical! It's a musical!
It's a musical.
It's a musical!
Yes, I get it now.
We'll do a musical.
No kidding.
A musical. What could be more amazing than a musical? With song and dance and sweet romance. And with the musical we might have a chance. Huzzahs, big applause, with everyone cheering for us. And for some unexplainable reason, the crowd goes wild every time when dancers kick in unison.
much fun. I'm a big fan of tap dancing, so that's one of my favorite numbers from this musical, for sure. All right, so maybe you recognize some of those musical references yourself. There are some that I didn't catch at the first time I watched it, but it's fun to kind of seek those things out. And they have a lot of different musical references within that song, but there are so many more throughout the play itself. So this next clip I'm going to show you was a performance that Brian Darcy James, who originated the role of Nick, that he did on The View on television. So this is the final number of Act 1, and this number is called Bottom's Gonna Be on Top. So again, he's looking forward to the future. He's really hopeful about his musical that he's going to put on, and this is another big exciting number.
No more Mr. Anonymous, no more world that is Nick Bottomless. My name will be synonymous with being on the top. I can see it now, I'm the cat's meow. It's a hit pow, it's gonna be great, gonna be great. Everywhere I go, they will love me so. Hail my name, oh, it's gonna be great, gonna be great.
Master Bottom's such a wonderful rider.
You really think so?
And your talent beyond compare.
Why, thank you.
You're a star, you are, it could be brighter.
You're just embarrassing me.
You're a real visionary.
Thank you, Jesus, and Hail Mary. This box will be on top. This box will be on top. Man, I'm gonna see the man, I'm gonna pop. And this box gonna be on top. Not so fast.
Hello, Will. I knew you wouldn't go down without a fight.
The Thompson, then. Thou surely doth jest. I say, on my honor here, I doth protest.
Yon rhyming couplet that is so 1580s.
Oh, yeah? Well, if you wanna make it to the top, then you're gonna have to go through me. 'Cause on the top is where I live, and I will not be giving up that easily. So there! Oh man, I have been waiting for this moment for so long. I'm gonna enjoy you when I knock you off your perch. Oh no, you won't. Oh yes, I will. Oh no, you won't. Yes, I will. Oh no, you won't. Oh yes, I will. Oh no, you won't. My accomplishments are much more accomplished than yours. In your dreams, I'm the best. You can't be the best because I am the best. I have written 12 plays, and each one is a testament to my great skill. I am the Will, and I will taming of the true, and Richard 3 and Richard 2, and Henry's 4 and 5 and 6, and Titus and Andronicus. And did I forget Romeo and Juliet? Well, I have just written the thing that the critics are calling the greatest thing they've ever seen. The people are loving it, can't get enough of it, everyone, even including the Queen. She recently invited me to her castle where she knighted me, and privately she told me that you're not any good, not any good, not any good, not any good, and she told me that all of your plays make her vomit, and nothing's as good as my musical omelet. Wait a minute. You wrote omelet? Oh my, how the tide has turned. Let's review. What have we learned? See, you were here, but now we swapped, so kiss this bottom, I'm on the top! Yeah! This bottom's gonna be on top. And I got a berry. I'm enjoying you. Yeah, this bottom's gonna be on top. Yeah, this bottom's gonna be on top.
So again, another huge fun number. That was, kind of a dream sequence for Nick Bottom, because at this point in the musical, he hasn't written Omelet yet. But as you could see, he kind of had that face-off with William Shakespeare, in which Shakespeare, is very impressed once he learns that he's written Omelet, which again, at this point, he hasn't written it yet, but this is kind of his hope for the future, is that he becomes better than Shakespeare. All right, so now we're going to go on to Act 2. So Act 2, we get a little bit of glimpse into Shakespeare's life. We haven't really seen him too much at this point. Again, most of the musical he's referred to as the Bard. So you'll hear me use those terms interchangeably, but they are the same person. So we see Shakespeare, and he's struggling to write his next hit. And then a spy comes up to him and informs him that the Bottoms have stolen his next hit. So he becomes, suspicious of what they could have stolen from him, and he has a plan in order to get that back, which we'll see later. So at this point, the Bottoms are getting ready to put on their musical omelet. They have a new investor, which is Shylock, but he doesn't have an official title because, again, they're not allowed to employ him. But he's still there, trying to help out with them putting this musical on. Nostradamus is also there. Nick's asked him to be there. But the troupe, along with Nigel, don't know who Nostradamus is. So Nick tells them that he is just an actor who's, part of their production. And, they're working on Omelet. They're trying to put it together. A character named Toby Belch shows up, who is actually Shakespeare in disguise, because he wants to spy on them and figure out what they're going to be putting on. And he, auditions and he joins the troupe. So while this is going on, we see that Portia and Nigel are, having difficulties thinking about their future together. And Portia's trying to reassure Nigel that their families will come around, that Nick will warm up to the idea of him being with her, and that her father will eventually approve of her relationship with Nigel, which we see is not the case, because her father then comes in, basically kidnaps her, and takes her prisoner in a tower, so that she cannot be with Nigel. Nigel is obviously very disheartened about this. He's very upset, and along with being upset about Omelet, he doesn't feel like it's the right thing. He feels like there's something off about it. He can't really put his finger on it. And he takes all of his anguish and he puts it towards writing a new play that he's calling Hamlet. So he's starting to work on Hamlet. He comes in to talk to Nick about it and about his, doubts about Omelet, and they get in a big argument, which, the Bard, he witnesses this, and Shakespeare sweeps in, and he tries to use this to his advantage by getting closer to Nigel. He asks Nigel if he can see his work, the play that he's been working on, which, again, is Hamlet. So Shakespeare promises that he's going to look over it for him. He's not disguised as Toby Belch at this point. He takes off his disguise in order to gain, Nigel's trust. He knows that Nigel really looks up to him. So he promises that he's going to take his work and try to approve upon it. So Nigel hands over his work that he's been working on. We then see Nigel. He meets up with Bea, who is, again, Nick's wife. And they talk about, the upcoming production. He tells her about his worries and concerns, and she reassures him, that they can trust Nick, that he's been there for them all along. He's always turned up when they needed him. This picture that we see here on the right is the character of the Bard, William Shakespeare, who's very loved and adored, and the character itself is such a fun version of Shakespeare. He's kind of an egomaniac, very narcissistic, but it's a really fun role, and we'll get a little glimpse of that when I show you one of our videos. But I'm going to continue with Act 2, and then I'll go back and show you the 2 clips that I have from Act 2, because again, there isn't too much online of songs from Act 2, just because Act 2 is just kind of the real snowball of all of these events. So we only have a little bit of music from Act 2 to show you today. All right, so while we see Nigel and Bea, they're, trying to learn to trust Nick, we see that Nick is having his own doubts about Omelet. He doesn't know if it's really the right thing to do either. But he kind of dismisses his concerns about it when he sees a line starting to form around the block. Many people are showing up to see the world's first musical. So they get the troupe together, they're going to put on their opening number. They do this big opening number, The song is called Make an Omelet, and it's all about basically the process of making an omelet, but there's a lot of Shakespearean references in there as well. And at the end of the number, Shakespeare reveals himself. He takes off his Toby Belch disguise and declares that he is going to be suing the Bottoms for stealing his work. So the next scene that we see is Shylock, Nick, Nigel, and Nostradamus are all on trial. Again, this is a very crazy and silly musical, and there are a lot of mixed opinions on Act 2, mostly because of the events that transpire here at the end of Act 2. Again, it's kind of a snowball of craziness here. So they're put on trial, and Nick is sentenced to be beheaded. So Bea, his wife, comes in. She's disguised as a lawyer, and she kind of puts Nick on stand and gets him to admit to stealing the money out of their money box. He does admit to it, he confesses, and so she asks that they do not behead him. She says it'll be redundant because he's already lost his head, which is, kind of humorous. So they decide to come up with a deal with Shakespeare that they won't be tried, Nick won't be beheaded, if they agree to be exiled to America. Again, they have been saving money for a country home, and now they're getting a home in another country. So they think, well, we might as well just take what we can get. So while this is happening, Portia arrives. She's escaped from her father's, she's renounced his ideals, and she decides that she's going to join them all in exile. Again, that's Nick, Nigel, now Portia, Nick's wife Bea, Shylock, and Nostradamus are going as well. They've all been exiled. So they tell the audience about the new world that's waiting for them, and they're excited about the opportunities. Once they get over to America, they hear about Shakespeare's new masterpiece, which is Hamlet, to which Nostradamus says, "I was this close." And that is how the musical ends. So again, this is a very crazy, silly, over-the-top musical, but all the different references to different musicals and all the different references to Shakespeare just make it that much more fun. We'll go into the reviews in a little bit here, and that might give you a little bit more of an idea of the complexity of this musical. But first I'll show you a couple clips from Act 2. So the first song I'll show you is called We See the Light. And this is a song that actually Portia's father sings. His name is Brother, and I believe it's Jebediah, or Jeremiah, I'm sorry. And this is kind of their vision of him agreeing to Nigel and Portia's relationship. This is their vision of him approving them, which again we see that he doesn't approve of them. But in her ideal world, he would hear all of Nigel's beautiful poetry and be convinced that Nigel's the right guy for her. the song from the beginning of Act 2 called Hard to Be the Bard. And this is Shakespeare's song. This is his really big number that he has, where he's basically, again, he's an egomaniac and a narcissist in this version of him. So he's complaining about how hard it is to live in his life and to be this successful writer and all the pressure that's on him to write the next big masterpiece. But this is a really fun version of the song. This is actually a music video of the song. So it's not a live performance of it. This is something that the actor Christian Borle, who originated the role of Shakespeare, and he decided to put together this music video of the song. Again, this is another one of my favorite songs from this. It's a really fun one.
Back to my room where I resume my attempt to write a hit. Just me and my beer and the terrible fear that I might be losing you. And it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's really, really hard. So very, very hard. I make it look easy, but honey, believe me, it's hard. It's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's so incredibly hard. So inconceivably, unbelievably hard. It's hard to be the bard. I got so many fans with so many demands, I can hardly go take a piss. You get me? Be it theater freak or the autograph seeker, they don't want a piece of this. Gimme. It's a cross that I bear, I'm like Jesus, I swear it's a burden, but I suffer through it. It's all part of the game, the trapping to fame. Somebody's gotta do it. So he does it. I know, I gotta go and get back to my pen and ink. Don't make me do it, don't make me go through it. Can somebody get me a drink? Cause it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's really hard. It's sexy, but it's hard. This law that I'm raising to be this amazing is hard. It's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's so annoyingly hard. So unavoidably, unenjoyably hard. It's hard to be the bard, baby. You see, what people just don't understand is that writing's demanding, it's mentally challenging, and it's a bore, it's such a chore to sit in a room by yourself. Oh my God, I just hate it. And you're trying to find an opening line or a brilliant idea, and you're pacing the floor and hoping for just a bit of divine intervention. That one little nugget, that one little spark, then eureka, you find that you're ready to start. So now you can write, right? Wrong, you're not even close. You remember that, damn it, your play's gotta be an iambic pentameter. So you write down a word, but it's not the right word. So you try a new word, but you hate the new word. And you need a good word, but you can't find the word. Oh, where is it? What is it? What is it? Where is it? It's hard. Now, it is, isn't it? It's really the word. It's hard. It makes me wonder why I didn't think of that first. It's hard. To alleviate the pressure to create. It's hard. To do something as good as the last thing I did that was already great. It's hard. So hard that he is stealing from the bar. But I'll hoist you lines to time. All that I need is a clever disguise. I can pay for his devious lies. I can do all the tedious stuff, the work that's terribly and unmerrily hard. Cause it's hard. It's hard, it's totally hard. It's hard, it's totally hard. It's hard, it's totally hard. Fortune and fame, everyone knows my name. I can't help it, it's still freaking hard.
Again, that's one of my favorite numbers. It's a little bit different in the musical, obviously, because he's not in Times Square when it's happening. But for the most part, it's just him struggling to write and him complaining and people surrounding him, fawning over him. But Christian Borle is just excellent in this role. And as we'll learn in a minute here, he also won a Tony for this role. which is pretty exciting. So this is my favorite part to present, to be honest, the awards and acclaims section here. So for the awards, in 2015, when it premiered, it received 10 Tony nominations, including, but not limited to, Best Musical, Best Book, Best Original Score, Best Leading Actor, Best Featured Actor, Best Direction, Best Choreography, and Best Costume Design. And it received one win, which was for Christian Borle for Best Featured Actor. That was who you just saw, Christian Borle, who played William Shakespeare. He is so incredibly talented. It was definitely well-deserved. It also received 8 Drama Desk Award nominations, including Outstanding Musical, Outstanding Book, Director, Choreographer, Lyrics, Lead and Featured Actor, and again it received 1 Drama Desk Award of its nominations, and that was again for Christian Borle. It also received a Grammy Award nomination for Best Musical Theater Album, as well as 12 Outer Critics Circle Award nominations and 3 Drama League Award nominations. So a pretty heavily nominated musical. And again, it was just such a fun and silly one. I'm sure that its silliness might have been one of the reasons why it didn't quite receive as much acclaim as perhaps other musicals, but I think running even 2 years with over 700 performances is still a pretty big accomplishment. And again, it was just such a fun musical to see and to be a part of. Okay, so now I'll go into a couple of the reviews that it received that I was able to find. There are quite a lot, but these are my favorites. So the New York Post called it devilishly clever under its goofy exterior. So again, you might think it was a little bit silly, the different things that you saw today, but really that's just one of the many great things about it, is its silliness. It's also pretty smart in a lot of its humor. Variety said it was a deliriously funny show, and that synthesis of highbrow and lowbrow humor is what makes the show so irresistible. It also said it had bold as brass music, ingenious lyrics, and sheer lunacy. So I think that's one of my favorite reviews of it. I think it really sums it up. Again, you have, all the references to musicals can be quite silly, but those Shakespearean references as well, I think that's kind of what they mean by highbrow and lowbrow there. Really just make it such a well-rounded show and just a night of so much fun. The Vulture magazine called it anything you've ever liked in a musical comedy is here, just waiting to sing and dance you into submission. So I think that's a pretty big compliment. Anything you've ever liked in a musical comedy, I feel like that really does sum it up. It's so funny. The music is so much fun. And then we have the Chicago Tribune, who said that it had the best opening comedic number of the season. Heck, several seasons. It's not just the cleverness of the song and director and choreographer Casey Nicolaou's triple time staging. It's the sticky melody the Kirkpatrick brothers have crafted. It's catchier than the plague, which, is kind of a funny little reference there because, the Renaissance, the plague, kind of timely there. So again, I feel like that's another really great review and really, describes it well. It's probably within my top 15 musicals that I've seen. Maybe not top 10, but it's just such a fun musical, and it really just makes you laugh so much. I'm a big fan of Shakespeare, and obviously I'm a big fan of musicals, so it just has, a lot of things that I love and appreciate. And I was lucky enough to see the national tour with Rob McClure and Adam Pascal, 2 actors that I'm quite a big fan of. So it's just, like I said, I know I've kind of said it a lot to this point. It's just a really fun and silly show. So that's all I have for you today for Something Rotten. Thank you very much for watching. This photo that I've attached here at the end is from the big number Make an Omelet, which, is part of Omelet, the musical. Again, it's very goofy, but that's part of what makes it so lovable. So I hope you liked what I put on for you today. Feel free to suggest any musicals for next time. I'll be looking for, some stuff that maybe you haven't heard before. but I am always open to suggestions. Anything would help. And thank you very much for watching today. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.